Welcome to another edition of the Best Business Minds, where we interview business leaders and academics that write thought-provoking books. I'm Marc Kramer, a serial entrepreneur who consults with family businesses and entrepreneurs. And currently, I'm teaching entrepreneurship at Vinh University in Hanoi, Vietnam. Today's guest, we welcome Andy Hilliard, author of the book Synergize, a blueprint of building effective, globally distributed teams in the new era of software development. Andy, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Mark. And I'm going to correct you real quickly. It's Synergea.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know the book is called Synergea. And so before we get into the book, why don't you tell us about your professional background, how you got to where you're at right now?
Sure, I'll try to keep it short. So I'm going to hark back to the late 80s. I was a Peace Corps volunteer after having a what I call a quarter life crisis, meaning, what direction is my life heading in? What brings me energy and happiness? And what do I really love to do? And at the time, I was a dutiful son who was working in banking and delivering on my parents' goals for me to have a nice, stable, conservative job for 50 years to get a gold watch. And that just wasn't obviously working for me. And I just needed a major shift in my life. I was an international business major as an undergrad, and I did some traveling. So I did have a penchant for traveling, and I did want to get into international business. Obviously, banking wasn't going to get me there. So I just decided to make a major pivot in my life, join the Peace Corps. Went to Costa Rica for 3 years, worked in small business enterprise development with ceramic associations and fishing cooperatives. And then I will say that I leveraged that to get into Northwestern Kellogg MBA program, where I also pursued international business, finance, and marketing. After Kellogg was known and still is known as a school that produces a lot of marketing and consumer packaged goods professionals. And of course, the recruiters that came there were mostly, Fortune 500 companies in that vertical. So I, like the other students, competed for jobs at these blue chip companies for title and for salary. And I ended up at Nestle. And I managed West Coast water brands. But, again, I was not fulfilling what I guess I really hadn't touched on, even though I went to Peace Corps and I knew I wanted to go into international business. But I hadn't really pursued that, in a very, focused manner. So a friend of mine told me that this new startup spinoff of Dun& Bradstreet called Cognizant was hitting the market, and they were looking for divisional managers to manage offshore global software development, primarily out of India. And I really thought that this was my opportunity to make that leap into the area that I really wanted to pursue. So I joined Cognizant as a Southeast divisional manager. Spent 3 years at Cognizant, onboarding clients and helping them build Indian-based offshore software service capabilities. And then I had an epiphany that a lot of the companies at Cognizant were then at that time, because they had grown from 700 to 20,000, that they were sort of offloading because they were not large enough to help Cognizant continue its growth pattern. And these were basically small and mid-sized companies, and Cognizant was now focusing on the Fortune 500. And I said, who would be Cognizant like that can serve small and mid-sized companies? And I just felt the need to replicate the Cognizant model, but focus on the small and mid-sized companies. So I actually left Cognizant, went back to Costa Rica, started a development organization out of Costa Rica with all the attributes that Cognizant couldn't provide to small and mid-cap companies. And that was primarily proximity, positive association. Costa Rica was very close and everyone knew of it and wanted to go there. And of course, they didn't have the number of engineers that India does, but they were graduating 2,000, 3,000 engineers a year, and more so because of the times and the demand. And so we built this organization from 0 to 300 people over 5 years. And ultimately, I thought the small and mid-cap market in the world is so great, and the demand is so great for digital services, because 85% of software developers live outside of the US, but most of the demand is inside the US. I'm sorry. And So I thought I compiled a team and we started traveling across Latin America and then Eastern Europe and then Asia in order to find companies, mid-sized companies like my company, Isthmus Costa Rica, that were complementary to us, but have the same qualities that I was looking for from a, like a mini cognizant, which is a depth and breadth of leadership and practice leadership and business leadership and thought leadership, certifications across different technology stacks and methodologies. And I compiled this network of certified software providers and started a new company called Accelerants. And that's where we are today.
And so, why did you write this book?
Well, the reason I wrote the book is because, as everyone listening here knows, that we're in a major pivot. It's a new revolution. We had the Industrial Revolution, we had the Internet Revolution, and now we have the AI Revolution. And markets are changing faster and faster. It wasn't but a couple of years ago when service providers around the world, without the use of AI, were primarily co-located. They had people that would, like in the US, they would get up and they would commute, and they would park and they would go to a central location, and there would be this, a professional organizational culture, and people would get together, work 8 to 5, and but that all got blown up. Not to mention with the um, necessity and the demand for digital services worldwide and talent worldwide, the number of organizations that were cropping up overnight, and you add into that AI where you can essentially create an organization overnight. It doesn't have to be co-located. Most resources are distributed now, so it's easier and faster to create a competitive entity. And so the combination of the number of entities popping up and the ease of which they were popping up and the commoditization of being able to find and locate talent and then engage talent, uh, and the advent of AI has really necessitated that I take a look back at the past of global software development and the future and where it's heading.
Well, I thought it was a very interesting book, and I guess now's a good time to dive in. So, in chapter one, for practical implementation, for organizations that are not inherently innovative, what are the first three actionable steps they can take to begin building business resilience using a multinational management model that you talk about?
Okay, so one I'm going to talk about is just pure access to talent. And as I mentioned earlier, 85% of software developers, reside outside of the U.S. And we don't live in a co-located world, even though a lot of companies are trying to mandate some level of in-office activity. But the reality is we have the tool sets and the talent resides outside of a 5, 10, 15-mile radius. And by not leveraging the talent outside of your radius or even outside of your state or your country, you're limiting yourself to the breadth and depth of what is out there. You're limiting yourself to cost efficiencies by looking outside of your own area, of hyper specialization of talent that is very specialized that can hit the ground and make valuable contributions right away. So just talent, access to talent is one thing. The other thing is diversification. A lot of our clients are looking to make sure that they have, as you say, Mark, resiliency and the ability to bounce back from turnover, from lack of supply. And they want to make sure that they have a model which can easily identify and integrate talent wherever it is into a culture that is still consistent, even though it is distributed and remote. So a lot of it is risk mitigation. And the third thing I'm going to focus on is that aspect of hyper specialization. And that is if you want to make greater strides faster, you're going to need to find specialists and obviously a vetting process that determines who the right person is for the right seat and find those specialists that can be integrated into a team work environment and make large value additions right away, as opposed to delaying value by knowledge transfer and training and retention and various activities with a team that is more generalist nature.
It's 85% of the talent outside the US. Did I get that right? Is that what you had said?
Yep, 85% of software developers reside outside the US, and 55% of all digital products on a value basis are originated inside the US. So you can see the mismatch between supply and demand.
Yeah. I mean, with all the computer science majors that we have in the United States, we're not able to meet that demand.
Absolutely not. It's 55% of all digital projects on a total value basis, and 85%. I mean, pretty much what I just said. We are not able to meet that demand.
Is that because we're just not churning out enough computer science majors?
No, I think it's based on just the amount of work there is to do, and the amount of the size of our country, and the amount our institutions are able to train and put into the marketplace. Obviously, some of it also is macroeconomically driven. The talent pool outside, we're 4% of the world's population, Mark. And a lot of countries produce a lot more engineers, and they produce a lot more hyper specialists, not because they do that for a reason, but just simply because of the supply difference in other countries. If there's more supply, there's going to be more hyper specialists.
Multinational management challenges. What are some of the most common challenges ensuring consistent treatment and fostering a unified team culture across multinational teams, especially when team members have different employment types?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, what do companies need to do in order to assure team culture and consistency and unity? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so they all work, cooperatively together, and especially because you're having some people are contractors, some people are full time. They're all in different locations. They come from different cultures. How do
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, so that brings up a really good social aspect of, and I'm speaking specifically about the U.S. market. And U.S. companies and the U.S. in general tends to be very transactional. We like our things very binary, very direct. And actually, we're very litigious, as you know. We like to lawyer up.
Yeah.
So this attitude of like, and that that obviously comes from post World War II, where we essentially own the vast majority of the world's GDP. Uh, Things uh, and our relative world power over the last few generations has allowed us to go into a very self-reliant type of environment. Uh, in software development, you can have that sort of culture and that mentality if you are in a co-located situation where everyone is, milling about and working together. Uh, Software is a team sport. If you're going to include distributed software engineers from different cultures and different places, even if it's in the US, you're going to need to have a collaborative approach. And you can't run an effective team unless you build culture, team culture, collaboration, empowerment, and aspects like that. So, American companies, in order to even hope to make globally distributed software engineering work, they need to take a go slow to go fast approach and institute the kind of environmental factors, cultural factors, empowerment factors, inclusion. And I know a lot of these words are like, words that are very sensitive these days. But the reality is, if you're looking for outcomes, and software truly is a team sport, a collaborative sport, you need to institute these aspects of understanding and appreciating cultures, empowering people no matter where they're at, treating them as equals, and making sure you have the right person in the right seat. So, for example, when we consult with clients and going offshore and building this culture, they typically want to just jump right into it and they want to throw things over the wall. Very binary, very transactional. And if they don't like it, they'll sue. Very litigious, right? And those relationships inevitably fail over 3 to 6 months. There's no establishment of credibility or trust. Trust starts to erode right away because no one has invested in each other, into the team, into the relationship.
How do you ensure effective knowledge transfer and maintain team cohesion across distributed teams, especially when there's a wide range of skill levels and experience among team members?
Well, there is, and of course, it's the responsibility of the team leaders in order to make sure that they have the right skills for the teams, and that the disparity does not, damage the integrity of the team itself. So I kind of, put that off to the side. There is an aspect of team selection and identification of the right resources. But then comes the team building and the empowerment. I often want teams to travel, and it's even better to travel offshore, frankly, in the early months of a relationship to break bread and to gain an understanding of team dynamics, team definitions, appreciation of other cultures. Now, sometimes I can tell you in my business, we work with software service providers that have a consolidation of team of resources in a particular region, and they can get together. I'm not talking to an audience which might, hire a developer in Russia and a developer in Paraguay and a developer in Vietnam and have individuals all over the place. Obviously, that makes coming together much more difficult. Not to mention there's disparate time zone mismatches, which makes it even more difficult. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. I would actually recommend to, there's 30,000 software development agencies in the world. Of course, there's only one right for each, which is where sort of we come in. We help clients find the right software partner to find that aggregated cultural talent and technical talent, which is also geographically concentrated so that you can get together and you can start to build these hooks of knowledge transfer and empowerment and accountability and measurement and continual improvement.
You match people up like that. I mean, what's the criteria you use aside from the technical part on a specific project?
Yeah, so we send teams around the world to vet software service providers, and we tend to focus on companies. These software service providers that are between 100 and 2,000 engineers. Why 100 and 2,000 engineers? Well, our market is small and mid-sized companies that are looking to scale and add a component, a percentage of global software engineering talent. Uh, as I said, to increase the talent pool, to mitigate risk, to distribute their risks, and to have a virtual distributed software development culture. And there's 30,000 development shops. We have teams that are scorecarding and researching them remotely through publicly available information. And as their score increases or not, in our research, we then will interact with them virtually over video, and we'll start to talk to their practice leaders and their business leaders and understand their value propositions, understand their ICP, their ideal client profile, start to hear anecdotes and case studies, start to talk to their clients themselves, and then we actually get on planes and we spend time in a region or in a country, whether it's India or Bangladesh or Vietnam or Costa Rica, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, or Hungary, Romania, Albania, and so we have partners in Eastern Europe, Asia, and Latin America, and we spend time with them. We break bread with them. We get to make sure that they have a breadth and depth of leadership across different areas, and we really get an idea of how they work with clients, how they interact with clients, how they integrate with clients, and how they produce software. So, in the end, we have a portfolio of 75 certified software development providers around the world in 32 countries. And we have different tranches. So our second tranche is like 200 service providers that are somewhat redundant to the top 75, but sometimes they have hyper specialized areas of focus that might be an attractive fit for a prospective client. And then when we do this quantitative, qualitative matching service with the client, which is a lot of sessions and a lot of questions to make sure that we can correctly weight and scorecard the service provider with the client, we then help the client to establish the framework and the methodologies in onboarding and creating a virtual, indistinguishable development culture.
I think most folks are always looking for the lowest cost provider for this. And for the longest time, right, India
Yeah.
was the chief place to go. What are the up and coming countries that are now good places, especially for American companies to look that also speak English as well?
There's a few questions that you threw out there, and you also threw out a statement there. And you're absolutely right, Mark, by the way. When companies first go out to look for software development, they're thinking rate cards, lowest cost provider. Where can I go? And of course, well, Asia is the lowest cost region in general. But I'm gonna step back a second because rate cards and the difference between $5 or $10 or $15 an hour is actually the lowest contributor to overall value. And by value, I mean uh, in terms of overall cost of development, speed to market, speed to ramp up, continuity of team. So, loss of talent, turnover of talent. Um, and there's so many other areas that are either a much greater contributor to value lost or value gained. But that's really hard to convince a CFO because a CFO is going to look at rate cards and they're going to say, are all three of these companies promising you the moon and the earth and the sun? And the answer is going to be yes, because they're in the business to say they can do everything and sell you on their services and win. And a lot of companies in the world, most companies in the world, are pledging to themselves they're not going to lose on rate. So I like to harken back to that Apollo 13, quote, and I'm going to misquote it. In fact, after this podcast, I need to go and get the exact quote, and that this spaceship is the accumulation of the lowest bidding contractors to put the spaceship together. I can't believe we're flying in this thing. Um, and that's sort of the American transactional mentality. Look at a rate card and make a decision. That being said, to answer your question, Mark, Asia is a lower cost region. Supply and demand is driving the vast majority of that, and also the history of being in outsourcing. India obviously is a natural destination location. Our Indian partners their rates tend to be anywhere from 25 to $50 an hour, but you can definitely find India rates that are 5 to 15, and you will pay in multitudes in terms of the quality and the speed and the continuity and the frustration and the risks that you're going to endure when you're paying for something. Because the thing is, these companies are going to make a profit margin. They're going to make a profit margin one way or the other. If you're paying for something less, it means they're cutting something out of what you're getting because they need to make their profit margin. So I'm sorry to harp on this point, but you want to save 25 to 40% from U.S. rates. Anything more, you're just cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're doing yourself a disservice because you're giving away for a couple of dollars. You're giving away major value additions or subtractions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I used to run a multimedia company, and we would tell them the same thing. And the guy said, "Oh, we don't want to pay 100,000, but this is what it was going to cost to go and do." So I said, "Well, we can charge you $5 an hour. It's just going to take 200,000 hours to get your project done." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's the American mindset of getting the best thing for the cheapest price, and now it's even exacerbated with these Amazon and Temu and Costco and Walmart, and we're always in search for a dollar less, and it's just such a mentality thing that we fall for that, and unfortunately, that's given outsourcing a really bad name. It is one is not building the framework and the culture to make it work, and two, choosing the lowest cost service provider, hoping that the promises that have been granted to you are gonna come to fruition, and that's a lot of betting on on hope.
This next question kind of fits into what you're talking about. What specific processes or frameworks do you use to set clear, achievable, and adaptable goals for remote teams, allowing them autonomy while ensuring alignment with overarching business objectives? And I also think making sure you meet their profit, what their profit margins are as well, because it's no use having a unhappy partner in this and they become your partner.
Oh, that's step number one, Mark, is the concept of servant leadership. And again, that is something that is not necessarily consistent with the American mindset. I am the buyer, you are the seller. I don't need to serve you, Mr. Seller. You need to serve me. I'm paying you for X. I expect X. If I don't get X, I won't pay you. And if I don't like what I get, I might sue you. And the concept of servant leadership is if you're going to be working collaboratively as a virtual extension of one another, the first place a company has to start and their mindset has to start is how do I serve the service provider so that they can serve me better as a client? And that's a really hard concept to grasp. But it is very important because in the end, a service provider has many clients and a team by the members of the team and by the service provider themselves is placed in a certain rung depending on the value of the relationship, the profitability of the relationship, the lack of turnover in a particular team because that causes a lot of costs and consternation to service providers to constantly find new members and then to onboard them, to train them, and to retain them. That's a big cost to them. And so the right mentality for a client looking to work with a service provider is first and foremost, you want to go in there making sure that you're somewhere between second and ninth most important client to that service provider on paper because you haven't yet experienced the relationship, but on paper, do you have the second to ninth best focus on the type of things the service provider is really good at doing? Do you have the size of engagement or the longevity of engagement that the service provider is potentially hypothetically profiting from over time? Because if you can serve the service provider's needs, you move up that ranking. And so it's very important to make that match. It's very easy to fall in with a large service provider and you have a small opportunity and some entrepreneurial salesperson says like yes you will be an A client, we will treat you like the best
They
client in the
always say
world.
that.
They always say that. They always say that no matter what, because they want to get their commission, they want to close the deal, and they have to hit certain metrics. I mean, that's the reality. But there is an art and there is a science to making sure that you have the right priorities and the right goals aligned with both parties, and to focus on the other person's goals and priorities is the smartest thing you can do in any relationship. And I'm not just talking, global. I'm frankly talking local, right?
Yeah. I have to tell you that when I ran this company, I did away with the salespeople making the deals. Their job was just business development, and they got 5% of the net profit. They
Yeah.
didn't get on the gross. And we brought in our developers, and they're the ones that negotiate the whole deal, outlines. If we're not going to have a successful project, let's not do it.
Absolutely, Mark. And let me explain something else to the audience listening here. 20 minutes ago, I talked about the major shift in distributed teams. They used to all be co-located. I would fly into San Jose, Costa Rica, and there would be a development center, and the parking lot would be full, right? And the ton of bikes and all that sort of thing. Everyone coming in. And there would be after, after hours parties and concerts, and it was a really cool place. But the world's changed. And the dynamics changed, and the economics have changed, and the abilities have changed. We're on Zoom right here, so you can communicate, virtually much more effectively. And you have AI agents, that are actually. So I use an AI agent called Empower.com. Really cool. EMPWR, I think, and it may be .ai. But it allows teams, distributed teams, to have calls. And even though people are on their own calls, these notes get integrated together. And I'm not here to sell it, but it's built for teams so that the summaries and the notes and the to-dos and the accountability and everything associated with disparate conversations all get integrated together and parsed and organized in a way that the entire team can understand what everyone else is talking about and doing and what the priorities are, and it matches it up to a roadmap and everything else that is measuring a team's effectiveness. So it's really cool. But to move that back to what I was trying to say is that um, teams now uh, are not co-located; they're distributed, and um, I've completely lost my train of thought. Have you ever had that happen?
Well, I'm 64 now. The train sometimes leaves the station without me getting on it for
And not
sure.
even coming back.
Yeah. Well, maybe the next question will trigger your thinking. Beyond cost savings and filling skills gap in IT, what is a structured approach for identifying other non-traditional business functions like marketing, HR, finance that can be strategically outsourced to enhance overall business performance?
Um, well, I can tell you that Accelerance doesn't focus on managed services or PPO. Those are the type of services you're talking about outsourcing. And there's it's generally a significantly different type of approach. Yes, the concept of empowering and measuring and breaking bread and appreciating each other's cultures plays into whatever distributed team, whether it's domestically or internationally, is concerned. But in general, the leveraging of managed services and BPO is an important aspect of every business function. My function just happens to be software development.
What specific measures can companies take to ensure quality control, data security, which everybody is worried about now, compliance with regulatory standards when outsourcing governance, risk, compliance functions?
Well, first and foremost, a good master services agreement, working with a credible, reliable, trustworthy partner who has who has their own business at stake, who have developed their business over many years, and who have many clients that are dependent on, consistent, trustworthy continuity of relationship. So, what I'm talking about here is basic um, due diligence and identifying, partners that you work with that have much more at stake than just your business and that practice both physical and logical best practices in terms of data protection and protection of legal standards. The second part, obviously, is a very strong master services agreement and a review of that master services agreements once a year to make sure that everything is in compliance and that the parties are acting faithfully towards one another. Um, and then obviously there's various tactical aspects like working with dummy data and making sure that people don't have any information or access to IP that is easily stolen or leveraged in some other way. So companies need to have an inventory and accountability of what their IP is, where it resides, how it is accessible, whether it's the software code itself or the data that they work with.
So, how can companies ensure that the consistent outsourcing does not negatively impact the long-term development, motivation, innovation capabilities of internal teams? I know a lot of internal teams feel like the company is selling them out so they can save a buck. What strategies can be used to foster a collaborative environment between internal and external resources?
So I'm going to harken back to the point I was making earlier about building an intentional extension of a an internal team and creating a cultural environment which includes I'm going to again use a hot term these days, inclusion and cooperation. You wouldn't think there used to be a time when words like that were not so sensitive, but the reality is that if internal participants realize that they have benefits of working for a company that appreciates people of all walks of life in different locations with different perspectives that bring different and actually unique and innovative ideas because of their culture, their location, their approach to life, and how they problem solve and how they work through strategies together. It's very empowering and it's very uplifting for internal and external resources together. Now, most of our companies have done away with this concept or even the idea in their culture of full-time contractor. It is a team member. It doesn't matter where you are locationally. It doesn't matter what your status is. I'll give a little factoid to your audience here. I mean, take for example Google. You think Google is a Silicon Valley company, but only 12% of people that are employed by Google are in Silicon Valley. Only 43% of only 43% of Google's employees are full-time employees. 57% are contractors. Only 44% of people who work for Google, whether you're a contractor or a full-time employee, reside in the US. 56% reside outside the US. So when teams come together, they don't look at each other as, are you full-time? Are you a contractor? Are you here in Silicon Valley? Are you here in the US? Are you here internationally? No, it's the uh, imperative direction of the team builder to make sure that they have the right resources and the right seats and that they create the right team environment of credibility, trust, accountability, radical candor, forward direction, meeting goals, measurement, and continual improvement. So those are regardless of who you are, where you are, what your status is.
In chapter 4, you talk about process modeling implementation. What specific techniques and metrics can be used to effectively implement process modeling in distributed software development teams to identify and eliminate bottlenecks? And how can the success of those processes be improved and measured?
That is a mouthful of terms and questions there, Mark. Uh, I'll try to answer that the best I can. So, first and foremost, we have to understand that processes can be unpredictable and reactive, and a company must put, defined risk management processes in place with some, basically agreed upon set of tools and some basic data consolidation to aid in the decision making of the team. Um, it's important to make sure that the team has standardized processes and that they have access to real-time information in order to measure those processes. Also, a company must have documented a comprehensive risk management strategy and policy, and making sure that all the participants and the other functions that rely on the software development team are aligned with that, and that there is continuous improvement in the definition of these risk management processes. And lastly, I'm just going to say that continuous improvement does have to be prioritized. And yeah.
I think I heard before that the US just doesn't have enough computer science talent to handle all the work that needs to be handled. And of course, the current uh, folks in the White House want to try to take back all the jobs that possibly can be brought back that we've now outsourced in other countries. How much can AI change this whole dynamic of outsourcing to other countries and actually just have it all done within whatever country? Because we have listeners from around the world, as
Sure.
opposed to outsourcing outside their borders. Because my understanding, and again, I'm not a technologist, but that AI can help you do the programming, can
Sure.
figure out almost everything. Where does AI play a role in this?
It's definitely changing the rules of the game, and over the next 12 months to 24 months, you're going to see a massive change in the approach to outsourcing, the use of outsourcing, or even insourcing, frankly. As you said, Mark, AI is doing a lot of the coding, and the improvement that we're seeing on a week by week basis is just incredible. So, most of outsourcing is going to be prompt engineering and editors. The coding itself is going to be done primarily through AI. So that's going to definitely make things much more efficient. In fact, I just heard um, you know what? I'm going to misquote this, and this may be out of time based on when this airs. But that U.S. efficiency over the last month is up 2.5%, and I think the just this month, which the numbers won't come out until the end of the month, the jobs are declining in the targeted number of jobs created, which means that the company is becoming more efficient in various ways through AI, not through AI. But the point being is that teams are going to be organized differently. You're still going to need talent. There's still 85% of today's engineers reside outside the US. And what I want to focus on as far as when you're outsourcing with a service provider is can a service provider provide you significant benefits in terms of team size, which is much more value oriented than a rate card, by the way. Because if you can get the same thing done with 7 engineers that you could with 10 engineers, that's a 30% saving. If someone
Yeah.
says that, hey, I could give you $5 an hour less rates, that may be attractive on the price card, but it's and those are only two factors. But and if you can reduce the contingency from like a 20-month project with 5 months of contingency to a 13-month project with 2 months of contingency, that is significant, speed to market in terms of overall productivity. That's what AI is going to actually be able to bring, and that's we want to make sure that service providers are being on the forefront of offering tangible advantages right from the get-go. Now, everyone's learning and efficiency is being gained on a month-by-month basis so that there's only certain things the service provider can do to promise greater efficiency than in the past. But I do think that service providers, if you're going to be credible enough to be serving a client, you need to come up with strategies to quantify the benefits of how you're using AI, how are you using AI with other customers, and what tangible efficiencies they're getting, either from a cost or a value perspective.
I think AI is the greatest tool that I can, in my entire lifetime, that's made such an impact in a short period of time. Because 2 years ago, we knew what artificial intelligence was, but we never had it at our fingertips that we're using it on a daily basis. And
Sure.
yet, the efficiency I find, even as an teaching at a university, you just can't even put a number on it.
It's Mark, it's incredible. Yesterday, I was reading an article about how Google has essentially, not on purpose, because they need to keep up. So we're a Google shop. We use Gemini primarily. We have our own internal LLC, LLM. I'm sorry. I was just setting up a corporation, and um, that's essentially eroding or destroying the historic Google model of selling ads because people go to
I keep
Google.
thinking, yes,
Yeah, right. They go to Google. No one's going to Google. I don't go to Google for anything hardly at all. In
I don't
fact,
either.
it's my last choice. Any answer I want, I'm going to go through Gemini to find the best this, to purchase that, and obviously to any contextual problem solving, I'm going to start there. And I never go to Google, and I'm just wondering, and our company has gone off of Google Ads completely because we just find the rates are maintaining and the value is decreasing exponentially on a daily basis. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I wonder too. I never use Google anymore. I just go to ChatGPT, or we have at my school two students that develop MindPal AI, IO, and it works beautifully. But I wonder what's the future of these companies, or even in consulting firms like McKinsey. Some of my students have worked there, and now they're getting rid of the associates because the client is already using AI to do the research for them. So there's no
Absolutely.
army of researchers. And now they're just using the senior level people for their expertise in whatever field to basically interpret what AI has told them.
Mark, real life story. So my son is a senior consultant for Cognizant, primarily focused on AI, working with Fortune 500 companies. And what you described is exactly happening there. I hear stories every single day. And these large companies like a Cognizant, Wipro, and Infosys, they are obviously hiring less junior associates, fresh MBA types of people that can go in
Gary.
and they cost $75 an hour internally and they bill out for $250 or $300 an hour.
Yeah.
And they're hiring less of them and they're churning them more because they're constantly finding ways to replace them through AI. And I don't have an answer for the audience. I don't know exactly, we know this is happening around us and we're all in this together and we're learning together. So yeah.
I think this is the first technology I've ever seen in my life that's actually displacing people with no place for them to go. And this is
Yeah.
across the board in almost every industry is now using it from medical to accounting. It doesn't make a difference what it is. It is basically giving you more control. And as somebody, if you have your own company, you don't need to hire as many people to get all the same information at your fingertips and make
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah, I completely understand. Being just a pure software engineer has become increasingly commoditized over the years.
Yeah, right.
Unless you're increasing your skill sets and building, human skills, team building skills, problem solving skills, leadership skills, you are inevitably a target for replacement. And frankly, I hate to say it, but that's, I guess, the history of the world, except now it's so much faster, so quicker. You evolve or you become commoditized and displaced. You either evolve or you die. Nobody likes change. I don't like change. Maybe I'm more change acceptable than most people are. But the reality is that this is a transformational point where a program I heard yesterday. The trades are exploding in people applying for trade school to provide basic services. And frankly, with possible deportation or whatever is happening in our workforce now, the basic trades are seeing a huge uptick in people. Somebody needs to be a plumber, somebody needs to be an electrician, somebody needs to build, somebody needs to, landscape and garden and all the different things that require that AI cannot necessarily. I mean, again, it's an evolution process. Like, how can I differentiate myself and improve myself above and beyond what AI can do to replace me, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen and heard um, when I was living in Philadelphia before I went back and I just came back from there, that the people who could do a handyman work, they're making a lot of money. They're just so busy
Sure.
because those skill sets are so lacking. And although manufacturers say all these people say jobs have been outsourced, if you talk to the American Manufacturers Association, there are like a million jobs that can't be filled because the people don't have the skill set to go and fill those jobs, and they need
Sure.
them. Now
I
there's
know.
going to be
Yeah.
14,000 homes that need to be built in Los Angeles. Where are the people going to come from to actually are able to do that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, getting back to what you're talking about here, in risk mitigation strategies, what are the most effective strategies for mitigating the specific risk associated with different outsourcing models, like staff augmentation, project-based captives? And how can companies proactively identify and address potential issues before they escalate?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, going slow to go fast. Uh, I know Americans don't like to go slow, and I know they like to get, progress right away. But the concept of going slow, and I'm not talking about years here. I'm talking about months in order to make sure that you have all the elements of a collaborative framework together, both contractually, organizationally, culturally, getting hiring, vetting, and getting the right people in the right seats, organizing teams, building camaraderie, trust, radical candor. All of these elements are extremely important for the continuity and the future velocity that the team could produce over time. So, you talked about, how do you build these? What do you need to do in order to mitigate risks associated with distributed software development? And first and foremost is the uh, building of the framework, building of the rules of engagement, building of the culture, um, uh, building of the empowerment, uh, defining the measurements of people and how they are to be measured both individually and as a team, and commitment to continual improvement in the overall success of the team. Going slow to go fast.
In maintaining strong relationships, what are the three actionable strategies for maintaining a strong, productive relationship with an outsourcing partner over the long term, even when facing challenges such as personnel changes and evolving business needs?
That is a good question. So, obviously everything I talked about just now about first building a framework for embedment and integration and culture and teamwork is obviously one way that opens up lines of communication and commits people to speak openly and candidly with one another and to proactively identify areas of risk or issue that inevitably are going to present themselves in any environment, no matter what. Things happen. Sometimes they're in our control. Sometimes they're outside of our control. But to have the kind of relationship where people are thinking in terms of uh, understanding before being understood, listening to the other person, being proactive about addressing an issue, identifying, raising an issue, and then addressing it together. Those we found to be extremely helpful and proactive about addressing potential problems that inevitably happen.
How can team leaders measure and improve the effectiveness of communication protocols within their multinational teams, ensuring that all teams, regardless of the cultural background or language proficiency, can effectively contribute and understand key project information? Here in Vietnam, they just decided a few months ago that everybody had to learn English as a second language in order for Vietnam to compete for the long term.
Sure. Um, so the last example you were talking about was I guess a political slash macroeconomic, uh, answer to what the country is doing, and frankly, that's one piece, and it seems like a very viable choice to do. But in regards to sort of the micro environment of a client working with a partner, um, it all revolves around building a single culture, appreciating different cultures and appreciating what they bring, but also creating a single culture of which there, are no barriers to communication and to status. And you can accomplish that obviously through uh, tools and exercises, meeting physically on different occasions, and building the trustworthiness and the again radical candor of an organization, of a team, so that they are communicating more effectively, and they understand that. Well, let me give you an example. So what we try to establish with our service providers and the clients that we bring to bear, is we want the offshore or nearshore team to be the by far and away the most attractive team to work for. That there should be team members on the service provider side, raving about the structure and the continuity and the closeness and the collaboration and the problems that they're solving together, and how people feel like they're coming to work with something above and beyond a paycheck to work for, that they feel a part of something, that they're involved in something, that they're contributing to the solution of a problem, and not just putting in hours for a specific rate. And what you get from that is much less turnover. You get much better recruitment of the kinds of people that fit your culture and fit your team culture, and also fit the problems and the clients that are being served. Um, and those are a couple of great strategies to pursue.
Addressing ethical concerns, given the potential biases in AI systems, what practical steps can companies take to ensure that their AI tools and algorithms remain fair, unbiased, and inclusive while integrating them into their software development processes? And is that, concerning the change of political winds, still a consideration?
Wow, that's a very complex question. I appreciate you asking that. First, I'm going to turn this back around to you. Do you have any thoughts on that, Mark?
Now I'll put it on the spot. I think it's still critical because you have such a cross section of people that are working in your organization, whether it's locally or internationally, that those things have to be considered
Oh,
in
they
order
definitely
to
have to be. Yeah, they
in
definitely
order
do.
to
And
recruit the best and brightest. I think younger people in particular are still sensitive to these topics, at least when I'm teaching at a university, that they worry that these things are thrown over the side for either political reasons or because of financial reasons. So I kind of think that these are things that companies have to still consider and act on.
they do. And I'm not going to give an answer here that has a best practice, because there is no best practice. Things are evolving too quickly. And um, to err is human, of course, and to understand that you're building globally distributed teams that hopefully have a framework for accountability and interaction and responsibility definition and measurement of team efficacy. But with the introduction of AI, there is a constant learning process, and there is a constant process of identifying mistakes and errors, and giving a certain amount of grace, but also holding people accountable to make sure that they are, acting responsibly, and that there are stopgaps in order to validate or verify, how people are working, and whether they're going down the right path or the wrong path. This is we're implementing a highly charged, highly evolving, aspect of a tool of development with a globally distributed team. And so, as you can imagine, there's lots of variables going on here. But I think the best way, in order to mitigate the negative impact of all of these variables and the introduction of AI and how things could go off the rail, is to have better cohesiveness as a team with a defined framework that has been implemented before rushing off to try to do something at a lower cost. That is always like the worst case scenario. Is we found a service provider or talent that we feel or we think or we're hoping can do X for Y price at a lower price point, and there are no rules of engagement, and you spend 3 or 4 weeks of honeymoon, followed by increasing friction over that time and misunderstandings, misdefinitions, misdeliverables, finger pointings, and the inevitable dumpster fire that comes out of that. That is the worst case scenario and the worst way to approach this. Building a cohesive team framework with definitions is the best way to start identifying other areas of risk that are inevitably introduced into the environment, like the AI
It was
aspect.
a fast hour. And I have to say, this book was great for non-technologists like myself to at least have some kind of understanding when you're in the room with technologists like yourself and be able to ask at least some intelligent questions and get some understanding when making these decisions that are quite expensive, that if you really don't understand what's being said, you can put yourself at a real deficit. So I thank you for writing the book. I thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And I thank all of you for listening. And we look forward to hopefully you'll write another book beyond this, especially with AI becoming so prominent.
So actually, Mark, we are writing a book and we're at the very end of it, called The Total Cost of Delivery. And at the very beginning of our conversation, we talked about, rate cards and why people would choose the lower rate cards. And I countered with the fact that, just sheer rate cards and going for the lowest cost solution is probably the worst thing you can do. And there's so many other factors. In fact, this book covers 16 value driving or value diminishing factors that impact, overall value creation at a much greater degree than just rates. So that book is coming out in pieces by chapters, and actually there's a webinar this month. But anyway, it's a really fascinating read. It's a read that's been on the top of my mind for many years, but it's been so complicated in considering all the factors that influence value creation or diminishment that I finally found the time to produce that. So it should be out in the next couple of weeks.
I look forward to having you again sometime in 2026. Everyone have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you all next Friday. Take care.